Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Straight Outta Prison Podcast. My name is James K. Jones, and this is my story.
And my name is Haley Jones, and this is his story that has now become a part of my story.
So this is the Season 2 recap. What's your favorite thing about Season 2?
Well, I think in the beginning, when you got saved, honestly, because I feel like it was really started a whole new, put you in a whole nother direction, even though you were still in prison.
A whole new world.
And actually, that's the thing I always ask people. I'm like, is he saved yet? When they tell me that they're listening.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And I was like, how far along are you? Like, well, I'm at, and they start trying to give me details. I'm like, is he saved yet? Because then that gives me an idea.
Where they're at on the podcast.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lady, I mean, I know her, but I don't even know her, that we go to church with that was telling me all about the podcast. And she was just saying, I can hear the redemption in your voice. And I was like, how far did you get? And she said, episode 5, or her husband said, she's on 5, I'm on 6. And I was like, I'm not saved. But I think it's because she knows me now. So she
Right,
sees,
exactly.
like, she knows, like, you know, she sees the way on the other side.
Right.
So that was kind of funny. And I've been surprised by people that are binge listening to this. Like, we've got a certain amount of followers, and we just passed over the 10,000 download or whatever you call it. Like,
yeah, the other week. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. And we're on every continent except for Antarctica.
Yeah.
So we've been downloading on every continent, which I'm not even sure if they have phones on Antarctica, all that ice and freezing. I mean, how could
They do, I'm sure.
How could you have anything working that? I'm just kidding. But I'm kind of blown away by that. Like, people that just start listening to it, and then they just listen to all of them. I even have a good friend, Robert, that he's not a podcast guy, but he started listening to it because I was nagging him about it. Because he's always asking me questions, like, go listen to the podcast. And he, like, got 2 in, and he just, like, binged the whole thing up to, like, the 5th, season 2, episode 5, and he was so excited. I'm like, do you realize that's like 15 hours? Like, you've listened to 15 hours of me talking, and he's like, it's good stuff. So,
well, it's kind of neat. I mean, it is like kind of like a Netflix series in terms of it's a story. It's your story. And I mean, stories are timeless, no matter whose they are, you know, that you can listen to it. And you obviously, if the story's already happened, something already happened, you want to know what happens next.
That's true.
So,
but this is like our 23rd podcast. That's 23 hours. Like a Netflix series, it usually caps at 10.
No, they have different seasons.
Well, that's
stuff.
true. I guess the seasons are 10. Okay, the seasons are 10.
So what's been your favorite part of season 2?
I think the excitement, you know, it was painful going through the middle, you know, the episodes, like when I first got to Donaldson, you know, they tried to rape me and all that stuff. That was hard, like reprocessing all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I feel like there was some healing in that, and I feel like I got a lot of like clarity through all that. And it's just like, God has always protected me, and he always will. And it, you know, just helps you like stomp out some more, just make me want to trust him more.
I feel like that's even helped you in the season we're in now. Like, so the couple weeks that we were actually recording those episodes, you went through like a major funk.
Yeah, it was bad.
Like, it was, I don't want to say dark, but it was kind of just like sad a little bit. Like,
well, it put me back in a dark place.
Yeah.
I remember, like, there's a lot of shock and a lot of, you're just going through stuff like that, and, you know, you kind of I buried all that. Like, it's, you know, because I knew that something good came out of it, so I was like, okay, I was supposed to be here. But at the same time, like, if you put yourself back in that situation, that was a desperate situation.
But coming through those 2 weeks when, like I said, even when we were recording and you were just retelling the story, and you went through this dark, weird, it's almost like you were going through the process again, which the good part of that, I feel like on the other side of it, like now, I mean, just, I live with you, so I see your demeanor most of the time, and we work together, so we're together a lot, but your overall demeanor just, it seems to be more, I don't know, like even more hopeful, like even for the season that we're in now.
Yeah, well, it's helping me realize, like, seasons and the process. Like, if you're following Jesus, he's always got you in the middle of a process, and even if it doesn't look like you understand, that makes sense. Like, on the other side, it makes sense. And you're like, oh, okay. Now, now it all makes sense. Like, looking back, it all makes sense. But like when you're in the middle of it, you're just like scared and fearful and all things.
Yeah, it's hard to zoom out when you're like in the midst of chaos. And
this season has helped me with that because it's like, we're in the middle of something new now with our company and even this podcast and all this stuff. Like, I don't know what I'm doing with it. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, you don't know what you're doing with this podcast stuff, or, I know how to cook, how to coach, we're good at that stuff. But it's been very helpful in helping me. Just like, it's kind of like just reignited, what's next, because there's always something next.
Right.
There's always something next. So
and that's true for everybody, just as an encouragement. Like,
absolutely.
I feel like I need to encourage myself in that. So I'm sure someone else needs to hear that too. But okay, so what's some of the questions or a question that you got? You want to start there? Or
there was one that I cannot answer, and I don't know. I don't even know where else to look. But I said I would find the name of the prison commissioner that instituted the honor dorm in all the places in Alabama.
Uh-huh.
I can't find his name. I know that he was appointed by Don Siegelman, who was elected in 1999. And he served from 1999 to 2003, because then Don Siegelman was defeated by Bob Riley, so he didn't get another chance at being governor. So that prison commissioner only got to be commissioner for 4 years, I believe.
So maybe this is if somebody out there knows, that's listening.
Yeah, I don't think it's
so.
that big a deal.
What is the actual question?
They want to know the name of the prison commissioner that appointed the honor dorm to all the things in 1999.
Okay.
And I can't find his name.
Okay.
But I know the governor was Don Siegelman.
Yeah.
And he was appointed by him, and he was the new prison commissioner. So, but let's don't get stuck on that.
Yeah, that's a technical. Okay. Any other question? I know we had more questions. What's another one?
I got a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
Just to be clear, this is questions that we got from people throughout the season and after, as people were listening, that we are answering now. Okay.
Yeah, and from we put out to our patrons too.
Right. Exactly.
And that's tell them what our patrons are.
So yeah, before we get to the question, we have patrons are basically people that listen to our podcast
and support the show
and support us recording it. We did some research when we started spending so much time recording
and money
recording, but we live in a world of free content. Blogs and podcasts are usually they're all free. But I found this way that a lot of creators, is what they call them, a way for creators to kind of support their creations. In our case, it's a podcast. But it's just where you support us. You can either do $3 a month, $5 a month, or $10. So it's not a lot, but it's just a way to just support us, to keep going and to keep telling the story and bringing that to you. So,
but with that, we've added extra value.
With that, so it's not just like you give the $3, but we've actually created another podcast called the For Real Reel, which maybe you've heard us talk about, but that's where we say things that we will not, or most people would not put on their highlight reel. So just things that are going on in our life, like present time, real life, like with our relationship, our marriage, with our kids, with our
church,
our health, our weight, food, church,
all things,
cancel culture.
But that
talk about all that.
That's on the Patreon. It's subscription only.
Right. So you get to listen to that when you become a patron. So we call it like a friend of the show, a best friend, or basically family.
Yeah. So when you subscribe to that, there's an app you get. It's a Patreon app.
Or you can download the app.
Yeah. You download it. Yes, you download the app. No, the app is just going to magically come through the air and drop into your phone.
I'm telling you, when people tell me these things, I need them to spell it out for me.
Okay.
How to do it.
Well, but you can do it through a computer, or you can go to their website. But if you download the app, it gives you like a social media type feed. So like on the Patreon app, like there's like a Team Jones feed, so you can just click, listen to all the extra There's extra content too from Straight Outta Prison Podcast, and then we're doing a bunch of neat stuff with
like
that.
Pictures but it's easy to access all of that through the app.
Yeah.
And you can do that through our website. You can find it anywhere, social media, but it's our Patreon account. You can see it on the podcast link.
TeamJones.co/podcast.
Yeah.
All right. So but a lot of these questions come from our patrons because we directly communicate with them.
Right.
And that's another way not to have those annoying ads on here. You know, I don't have to stop and say, let's pause and go to Hello Tushy.
James is against having ads. I'm not so much, but it is a way for us to kind of support, ourselves.
I'm not against having ads as long as it's not something that's just like fake. Like, I'm not going to buy something to connect to my toilet seat to squirt water up my butt.
See, I might.
You would not.
I might, honestly.
You might buy it, but you wouldn't use it. you wouldn't use it. It'd be there's something else in the way. But anyways, let's move on to that. One of the questions, have I said any questions yet?
No, we haven't.
All right, one comes from Nora. She says she's fascinated with the way that I tell Bible stories.
Yeah, she wanted to know. She's like, can you just do a podcast where James tells Bible stories like in his own words? Like she was referencing, was she referencing where you talked about David?
The Joseph
and how somebody wanted that good Hebrew stuff?
I mean, that's what happened. I mean, if you read that story, the lady was coming at him. She was an older lady.
When you say she was coming at him, she was coming on to him is what he means.
She was coming on to him. She was coming at him, and she would not let up. And she was just she wanted some of that good Hebrew stuff. She just had to have it, and he didn't give it to her. So good, kudos for him. But I'm down with that. I mean, maybe we could. I would love to do that. I love telling my kids the Bible stories in my words because I feel like they get it.
Well, I've actually told you for several years now, like when we've been talking and I'm like, oh, what was that story? And I ask you the story and you tell me what the story is. And I'm like, you tell that story like nobody else. I mean, sometimes he might even interject a couple cuss words.
Hey,
well, you do. I mean, not that you have to, but it's just very funny how you tell the story because it is the real story, but in your own words, and kind of helps with, understanding it in context of today.
Yeah,
and making it relevant.
I agree. So maybe, who knows where we're going with this? I know I want to do a companion podcast to the Straight Outta Prison podcast where we kind of dig deeper on like how I learned things. And one of the last episodes, I think it was episode 11 of season 2 about falling apart and dealing with issues. That was one of our patrons, Jonathan. I got a message from him. He said I really enjoyed every episode. I love the podcast, but something about that one really touched me. And, hopefully, telling stories like that, you help people, deal with their own, want to, like, oh, wait, I can be free too. Because this is not like, there ain't nothing special about James K. Jones. There's something special about human beings because we're all created in the image of God. So there's nothing. I mean, I remember my dad's wife, she used to annoy me when I first started my Jesus journey. She would tell me, I believe in all that, but not everybody gets it like you. And so I'm like, but everybody
gets it like you?
Yeah. Like I had some kind of special like thing with Jesus. And I was like, maybe not, but everybody can. I mean, he's no respecter of persons. That's the scripture. Like he wants us all. He wants all of us the same. And he's got a plan for all of us. Like our plans are not going to look the same, but I disagree that, there's no special end to get God's best. You just have to surrender to him and listen to him. At the miracle that Jesus did where he turned the water into wine, his mom looked at the servants and was like, just whatever he says to do it. And they were like, okay, what do we do? He's like, we'll dip it in, dip it out. Okay, it's wine. Woo. Like, but it's that simple.
It's that simple. Yeah.
Following Jesus is that simple. You just, whatever he says to you, do it.
It's simple, but it's hard.
Oh, it can be so hard, but it can also be so simple. That was one of the things for me before. Like before I had like a heart change, I won't even say heart change until I came like alive spiritually. I thought that like religion or doing the right thing was just like this hard like labor thing that you had to do. But I realized like you don't do it by yourself. He helps you. Like he ain't gonna help you do something he don't want you to do.
Right.
But like if it's part of the plan for you that he has for you, then he's got the grace to help you. And I remember when the first death that I experienced close to me was my Meemaw in 2003, and I dreaded her, just dreaded because I didn't have a lot of death when I was growing up. And it was just amazing, just like the grace and the peace that I got. And it was like, oh, I can even get through this and be okay. So but let's move on from that.
Yeah. I mean, I have more to say, but we can talk about it later. Let's get to another question.
Okay. This question has come across the board. Is Alabama, like, am I exaggerating about the violence and the way the Alabama Department of Correction is ran? Like, is it really that bad? And the answer to that is yes. But since I was there, I left there in 1999. It's worse now than it's ever been because they keep packing them in. It's bad.
Didn't recently, I remember we talked about this like a few weeks ago or a month ago or something, a YouTube video got leaked from
there's a lot
the
of
prison.
See, that's something we didn't. When I was in prison, I don't even think we knew what cell phones were because I don't know if we disagree over when they came out. I know when I got locked up in 1993, my aunt Denise, her husband Kenny, he's a businessman, entrepreneur. He's got all the money. And he bought her a car that had like one of those big cases in the middle.
My dad got one of those.
In the car. And that was the only thing that I'd never seen anything like that. But then when I got out of prison in 1999, everybody's running around with these little phones.
Right.
And they're in the grocery store. Honey, what kind of tomatoes? I'm like, these people are crazy.
That is crazy to think that, like, from the time you went in.
I didn't know. I never saw. And computers, internet, all that stuff. Like we would see I remember they would do Yahoo commercials or AOL, America Online. Mm-hmm. And we were like, what does that mean? And then we'd read the news and it would say, if you invested in Yahoo stock, you're a millionaire. And then we'd be like, we don't even know what it is. Like, we didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
We didn't understand the concept of like cell phones and internet, stuff like that. So there was none of that. But I think I volunteered in Alabama prisons from like 2000 to I think like 2013, 12. I think 2012 was when I still go and do like special stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't go like regular. They all got cell phones now. And I had guys that I was working with when I was doing prison ministry that would want to call me. And I'd be like, are you crazy? Don't be getting me. But now they got smartphones. Now they got iPhones.
But they're really not supposed to have them in there, but they have them anyway.
No.
Okay, but let's go back to the question was, is it really that violent? And you said yes, even more so.
It's more than it was when I was there. But now these guys are having these smartphones, and they just mash record and do a video like we would. And then they send it to YouTube.
So that video that came out, basically, what was it?
It was a guy that's like an activist kind of guy. Like he's trying to tell the world what's happening there. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happened to him.
Oh.
But the video is...
But it was a beating or something?
In the video, it showed them dragging him out in a trail of blood. And then the guy that was doing the video went in his cell and it was just full of blood. And it was, I believe it was wasn't by other inmates, it was by the police. But let's don't get stuck on that.
Right, but I was just making the point that it was that bad, and it is still, if not worse.
No, it's worse.
Seeing it, yeah.
It's that's why I stopped going in there. The last time we went, Gilbert and I went to Donaldson to try to do a life after prison class, and when we toured through there, it's like whatever change had happened there when I was there, it's not like that anymore, and now it's even worse. And I was just like, I ain't doing this to myself. Like, if y'all can get it under control, get it, where it needs to be, I'll do that. Now, I do go in some of the other prisons with our church, when we have freedom conferences and stuff like that. I've done St. Clair, I've done Bibb, but it's crazy. Yeah. And they just keep packing them in there. I was at the Bibb correctional facility with a friend of mine doing classes. Gil, somebody that I met when I was in prison. I did 12 weeks for him and his little program that he's got down there. And there was a guy that was a prison fellowship guy, and, sincere, but just don't know what he's talking about. And he's like, I just don't understand the violence. And I'm like, would you look at what you're looking at? This room here is designed for probably 50 people. There are 200 people packed in here. What do you think's going to happen?
Right.
What can happen? It's a recipe for disaster. But now they have cell phones and they have heroin. So, and the heroin is just coming in, these guys, and now people are just dying.
So my question is, I know you say, how do they get the heroin in?
Well, they've always said that drugs come into prison through visitation. And The interesting thing about this past year and the COVID is that it's been on lockdown. There's been no volunteers, like churches. Nobody can go in prison except the police. And there's been no visitation. And heroin overdoses are worse now than they've ever been.
What? So who's bringing it in?
Who do you think?
The police officers?
Duh. I mean, that's always been the case. I mean, I'm not saying some of that stuff didn't come in like that, but it's a corrupt.
Right. Gosh.
And I mean, you know, I'm from Alabama. I love Alabama. This is my home. But they don't do prison well. They do not do prison well. Nothing, you know. And I was in prison in Florida, and it was hard, and it was prison, and it was, you know, they were trying to rehabilitate us. They didn't run their prisons like that. They ran it like the military. Like their officers were like the military. But Alabama's under investigation. And then Governor Ivey just signed a bill to build 4 new prisons and just basically knock down all the other ones. And you got people out there protesting that. So, you know, I know people mean well, and these young people don't know what they're talking about, but I don't comment on people's, like, social media stuff because I don't want to get involved. But they were doing that where they were protesting that because it was something about private prisons. And I was like, I don't even know what you're saying. Like, we would have given anything to have a private prison because when it's a private prison, it's ran different. So it's just a mess. It needs to be the whole thing needs to be overhauled.
Yeah.
And I hope they do, but it's pretty bad.
It's sad, yeah.
And people are dying every day. And if you want more information about that, there's a lady that used to work for Fox 6 when I was doing cooking spots there.
Yeah.
Her name's Beth Shelburne. She has a Facebook page. She's an investigative journalist, and she has really dug deep, and she's just not letting it go. Like, she's every day pushing. And she's doing good work, and I really appreciate what she's doing to shine a light on that because, you know, you get back to that thing, well, you're supposed to be in prison. You are, but is it supposed to be like that?
Right.
Are you supposed to have to deal with that? Another question is, how's the honor dorm now? Mm-hmm. So I tried to do the math on that. That would have been 22 years in now.
Wow.
From what I understand, there is still honor dorm at every facility in the state of Alabama. But from what I saw from most of them, even the one at Donaldson, is it's not the same because they don't have the standards that they had. So like some of them try to, but it takes a mix of the inmates that are already on the inside, like they have to be bought into it, and then the administration and the chapel. Like you have to have the inmates, you have to have the administration and the police, and you have to have like free will volunteers that want to see that.
And so if one of those kind of goes missing or is not good, then it kind of breaks down. I can see that. And
it becomes like symbolic, like kind of like religious denominations, you know, like one time God was doing all this stuff, and so we're doing all this, and then now we're still doing the same thing, but it just ain't the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. I mean, I have a dream, like.
I have a dream.
I do. I would love to like figure out a way to like redo the honor dorm or, you know.
What about redo the whole prison system?
That's for James K. Jones. That's for the elected.
Go big or go home, baby.
That's for the elected officials to deal with. That's their problem. I mean, no, I would love to help, but I mean, ain't nobody asking me for help. So, I mean, I would. Like, well, me and Cloverhouse did that when we were like in the middle of the thick of when we were gaining momentum and everything was changing. Then the guy came in and said, "We want one of these everywhere." Cloverhouse was like, I bet if we keep going, they give us a whole prison. Like, if we could keep running it like this. And I was like, wouldn't that be amazing? Like, you just have, you know, you have a prison where people want to do something different. You can go here.
Right.
And then actually produce, like, good stuff instead of just
reform.
PTSD and
real reform.
More pain and more. But it's sad. The people, you know, a lot of people are dying now.
Okay, so which brings me to my next question. You just brought up Culverhouse, Jason Culverhouse, your roommate, cellmate, for a couple years, who helped started the honor dorm, or was one of the key players with you. And you mentioned briefly in a couple of the episodes part of his story.
Yeah.
And I have had personally loads of people.
I have too.
Ask me questions about him.
Okay, I don't want to say a whole lot about him. He has given me permission to write because I started a book, and I'm still in contact with him. I called him and wrote him. I was like, look, I'm working on a book, but like your story bumped into my story, and I really want to tell it, but I want your permission. And so I wrote it how I wanted to write it, and then I sent it to him, and he said, one thing. I'd said that he killed his younger brother. He's like, it was actually my older brother. I was the baby of the family. And I was like, oh, my bad,
Let's remind people, can you remind people a little bit of a story, what you breezed over for people that are like, oh, I missed that.
It was a famous case in Alabama, and there was actually a movie made about it. The Culver House murders. It was down in Arrington, Alabama, down below Dale County, I believe, down below Dothan, out rural area. Whole family got slaughtered, and it was an unsolved murder thing. And Jason was at his girlfriend's house and had a pretty tight alibi.
Jason was a son in the family.
Yeah, and then he had an older brother who had been written out of the will by his dad, so he became the top suspect. But then they proved that he didn't do it. Then they couldn't figure out a motive for Jason. And anyways, it was an unsolved murder mystery for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And it was around the time of the psychological profiling of criminals and forensics, like psychological forensics, where they couldn't, they wrote it off as a cold case and actually had floated an idea that maybe this guy was into drugs because he owned a trucking company and he was like slaughtered by a Mexican cartel or something,
The dad owned a trucking company. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they were a very prominent family. I mean, they were,
Isn't there a school named after a building or something?
I don't know if his grandfather, great-grandfather, is in his,
in the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Culver House School of Law at the University of Alabama.
Okay.
Was his family.
That family. Okay.
Yeah. And it's still there. Mm-hmm. But they sent the cold case to the University of Colorado, some college students that were studying this criminal psychology stuff, and they cracked the case. And I don't want to say how they cracked the case, but they, because I want to tell a story later.
Yeah.
But they went to his older brother and said, your baby brother slaughtered your family. And he was like, no, he didn't.
His baby brother is Jason Culverhouse.
Yeah.
Who was your
and his brother was like, no, he didn't. And they said, no, we'll show you. So they prepped him and gave him some questions to ask to like break him down. And he did and confessed to it. And then he quickly made a plea deal because he didn't want to get the electric chair, that if he would confess, and that by that time he was married and had a baby, that if he would make a confession and, do all the stuff, that they wouldn't give him the death penalty and that they wouldn't bother his wife and kid. So he ended up with a life without parole sentence, so he'll die in prison. And then he went to prison and turned into like, a gangster because, he was going to be there the rest of his life.
Well, any person that's killed their mom, their dad, and their brother.
Oh, God.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, well, see, I didn't know him then. I only knew him after he had an experience with Jesus. He went on a Kairos weekend, had an experience with Jesus, and then just his life flipped. And that was when I met him. He was my cell partner the last year and a half that I was in prison.
Okay, year and a half, yeah.
And he became like a brother to me. He's somebody, like an older brother to me. He's somebody I love to this day.
I mean, it's hard for someone like me to imagine being that close. I mean, even just like physically living with someone in the same cell that I knew committed that kind of crime, like murdering the people close, his mom and dad and brother.
Oh, it was worse than that. When he got to prison, he got a back tattoo. You know what a back tattoo is?
Well, a tattoo on your back?
Well, a back tattoo is where it covers your whole back.
Okay.
So it's like a huge painting. So he had a tattoo put on his back with three tombstones that says mom, dad, bro. And then a picture of the devil, like holding a pitchfork.
Oh my gosh.
And then on the bottom it says the devil made me do it.
And that's permanently on his back?
Yeah. I mean, that you saw, that's crazy.
That's insane.
But I don't want to get too deep into his story because, like I said, he gave me permission to tell parts of his story. Mm-hmm. We're either going to make it a couple episodes after we get done with our story or maybe even do our own podcast. Because people are still interested in that story. And I know a part of the story that's never been told because it's from his side. There was a movie made. It was a USA movie called The Morrison Murders. You can still find it.
What is it called?
It was called the Morrison Murders.
The Morrison
You know how
Murders,
they
okay.
rename stuff?
Yeah.
And I watched it when I got out of prison, and
it's that story. It's his story.
it is, but it's not totally accurate.
Okay.
But when I watched that story, I didn't speak to him for almost a year because I was just like, hold up.
And you were out of prison at this time.
Yeah, and he was one of my best friends.
You were just like kind of
I was in
spooked
shock.
by it. Yeah.
I mean, I knew this. He told me everything. He didn't tell me all at one time, but I would get curious. Mm-hmm. Ask.
Yeah,
questions.
if you're sleeping above or below, whatever you were.
Well, the weird thing was
With this
after
person.
he had his family disowned him when he came to prison. I mean, he killed their,
Yeah.
duh. But after he had an experience with Jesus, he started like reconnecting to parts of his family. He tried to reconcile with his older brother, and his older brother took a call from him, like one call, and said, "That's good, and I love you, and I'll always love you. But you took my mama from me, so I can't. I just can't. And I get that, Mm-hmm. His brother actually I read an article recently where his brother was like, "Please don't kill my brother," because the judge that sentenced him was a family friend of his dad's. Like, my mom's dad, my dad's dad. Please don't kill my brother. And so just seeing their pain, like that side of it, it's a lot. It's a lot, but it is a story of amazing grace and redemption. And what happened with Jason was real and is real. And it's just amazing grace. And that's all. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. But he reconciled with his mom's sister, his aunt. And this was her sister that he killed. It'd be like somebody killing Abby. And then she forgave him and started coming to see him and doing all this stuff. So she started sending him Bible studies written in his mom's handwriting, where she used to have she did a women's group a couple times a week, but she led them.
Holy cow.
And she would write out the outlines, and she used them for her Bible studies, but she saved them. Well, now her sister had every week, as a new believer, she was sending him those Bible studies written by his mother. Ooh. That he killed. I mean, it's crazy. But one night,
I will wreck you.
Well, I didn't ask a lot of questions because it's like, you find out some parts of it, and then, but there was one night I just said, I was asking him questions, and it was just, how can you do that? So I found out like he killed his brother in his sleep, shot him in his sleep, so he didn't know it hit him. But his dad heard the gun go off, ran down the hall. He hid in the hall and shot his dad in the back and killed his dad. So his brother or his dad didn't know that it was him. And then he went in to where his mom was, and the door was locked, and he took a shotgun and blew the doorknob off and went in. And when he shot at her, but it didn't kill her. And she was trying to make a phone call. Like, she was trying to call the police. But he was smart, though. Like, he can't, like, he's just smart. Like, he came up with this thing, like, if you use a gun in your house, they can't take your fingerprints off of it because it's already your gun. Right. So he used his own gun and then put it back. And then when he came in the house, he took the phone off the hook so that no calls could go out. And then, but he had to go, and then he killed her. And I was like, how could, like, she gave you, like your mom, how?
Real quick, so he shot her and it didn't kill her, and then she tried to make a call.
She had the phone in her hand. But I said, well, did she know that it was you? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, what was she doing? Like, what was she saying? And he said, and this is the part that always gets me, especially now I'm a daddy. He said she was praying for me and praying that God would somehow save me. And he did. Eventually he did. Goodness. It's just a crazy story. But I mean, I feel like that could be a podcast. I mean, we got the S-Town thing. It's only 7 episodes. I could get 10 episodes out of this because over time, he's told me, and the story that you hear, like because he don't ever talk. He don't talk in court. He's never like got a story out there, but he has a side to it, and it's awful and it's evil. But I think his story needs to be told.
But the redemptive side, which was after you met him, is
Yeah.
also kind of just, I mean, the whole thing is kind of
It's amazing.
mind-blowing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But if you Google that, the Cloverhouse Murders, like you can read all, and people are always asking, where's he at? And, you know, I mean, I'll ever comment. It's not my, they can keep trying to figure that out. But that, let's just say there's more to that story. You don't just kill your family for nothing.
Yeah.
So, that's heavy. Let's move on from that. Let's take a move. Another question. Wayne asked me, he said, have you thought about having a reunion where you take the original 12 guys back in and do like a thing with the guys that are in the honor dorm now? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like an amazing idea. But the only problem with that is, like, one of those original 12 was Coverhouse. He'll never get out of prison. So he's already there. Huey Coon, I think there was some kind of robbery gone wrong when he was a young man. Somebody ended up shot or something, and he's got a life without parole. He'll never get out of prison. Chris, I have no idea where Chris is. Terry Bush, he was one of those guys. He actually lives in Calera, I believe. Hopefully he's listening to this podcast. Hey, Terry. And me and the other guys, I don't even know where they are.
It's crazy though, like kind of you make the assumption when you're hearing this, and I do too, like, oh, you did your prison sentence and now you're out. Whereas the reality of it is that
this was a
lot of them had
security.
life without parole.
Yeah.
But also the recidivism, how do you say that?
Recidivism.
Yeah, rate is like we've talked about before of that. It's more common. Can't remember the exact stat.
It is.
That when you get out, you come back within a year or something.
None of the guys that have got out have went back.
From the honor dorm?
No, none of the guys.
Okay.
Now, of the 12.
Okay.
Now, there was a guy when we started the honor dorm. His name was Mike Brown, and he was just a big, silly, goofy, would never take anything serious. We threatened to kick him out, so he would always do just enough to stay in. And I remember, like, he wasn't going to do anything different. He was young and stupid. He was about 6 feet tall, big white guy. He was annoying, but somebody was teaching a class where he talked about, the guy was talking about, my daughters have a curfew, and he started laughing. And he was like, what are you laughing at? And Mike Brown was like, curfew? I ain't never had no curfew. And the guy that was teaching the class was like, well, it's funny, you got one now? Because when they locked down at 10:30, that's your curfew. You got a curfew now? And Mike Brown just like, shut up. But he would never take anything that we were doing serious. And he got out, like, maybe the beginning of 99. And I got invited in 2005 to go into Donaldson and hand out Christmas bags. And I always usually decline the offer because they want you to go in at like 4 o'clock in the morning. Because you go around, everybody's asleep. You just give a bag. You know, everybody gets the same thing. You say, Merry Christmas, Jesus loves you. And they had needed people to go on death row, and nobody wanted to go on death row. And I'd never been to death row. So I was like, I'll go. And me and Jeremy, that used to work for me, we went to death row. And the first cell that I went up to, and I put it in, and I said, Merry Christmas, Jesus loves you. I caught his voice. He said, thank you. And I caught his voice. And I went back, and I was like, Mike Brown, is that you? And he was like, James Jones. You know what I'm saying? And then I started crying. Like, what are you doing on death row? Oh, you know, man, I got out. I got framed. I got a case. They framed me on a case. And I'm like, you don't get to death row for getting, I mean, you have to have like a capital crime to get a death sentence, bro. Like, but so that's it. I mean, I don't know where he is now. I need to look him up. Then there was another guy that we had in the honor dorm. His name was Kenny. I won't say his last name because this was local. He was one of those guys that was always like a hard, you know, like one of those hard right guy. We got to do everything just right kind of guy. He got out of prison in 2007, I believe. He went through the reentry program at the Foundry. Saw him one time, but he was just real haughty, real, you know, I got Jesus, and me and Jesus, we got our thing. And I was like, well, good luck with that. I don't do all that. I mean, I got Jesus, and we got our thing, but it ain't all that, like, pride. Like, 6 months later, Steve, this was when I had Kairos. Steve came in Kairos, and he said, have you watched the news today? And I said, no, I've been at work. And he said, Kenny, said his last name, killed his grandmother today, beat her to death, because
he was strung
out on crack or meth or something.
What?
And I started crying. He was like, "Don't cry." I was like, "I don't know. I'm not trying to cry. I mean, I got to go. I'm working, but I mean, I don't like. How do you get? I mean, how do you get there?" But
and that's one of the guys that helped start the honor dorm.
He didn't help start, but he was in it.
He was in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's so sad.
Yeah, but then there were several other guys, great stories coming out of there. Like a guy named Arthur, Marvin, people that had like life without parole sentences, Mr. Johnny, people that got out and are doing great. And I've kind of lost touch with a lot of them. I think I'd love to see Chris, but he's like out west somewhere doing something. I don't know what he's up to now, but he got mad at me one time because I confronted him, some of his behaviors. Because he like takes his kids around from state to state. I'm like, it's not good to do that with kids. And he got upset with me, but I still love him. I got one from one of our people named Jessica. She's curious about why I never talked about visits at Donaldson.
Like visits from family?
Yeah, because she said I talked about it a lot when I was in prison in Florida, but she noted that when I was at Donaldson, I didn't talk about my granny or my mom or any visits. Mm-hmm. I got one visit at Donaldson from my mom, and they treat them like criminals. Like they take their pants off. They do all kind of nasty stuff.
What?
They made her
take their pants off?
They made her like strip down or something. And so I like, well, just write letters and talk on the phone. I'm not putting y'all, especially my grandma, like, no. Mm-mm. So I only had one visit that 3 years I was there.
Wow.
I didn't want to visit. I was like, I'm not, this is bad enough as it is. I'm not putting my family through that. So that's why that. We got a message from Elizabeth. She is a probation officer. And she says she's came across the podcast. She started listening to it. She listens to it every week, and it is her weekly encouragement to keep doing what she's doing, because by listening to it, she sees that change is possible. And probation officers really have a thankless job. I mean, I salute them, the good ones. The bad ones, I don't salute y'all. Y'all need to go do something else. Go work at Walmart. Amazon's hiring. But that she is encouraging to her, because it's like it makes her want to work with the people. Like, you can do something different. Then I got one of the most touching messages I got. I just got this message today. Her name is Vanessa. She's from Indiana. She had a son that was sentenced when he was 19 to a maximum security prison in Indiana. He had a heroin addiction, and he died. He OD'd in a cell by himself at 25, and she's been wrecked behind that. But she said she was trying to find ways to understand, and and she came across the podcast. She's been listening to it. She found it. She says it's helping her to heal, and that she can hear her son's voice through my voice. Like it's helping her to understand and to heal.
Well, that's neat.
And I know, but I just I say thank you for that, but I'm so sad. I'm sorry about your son. Because that could easily be me.
Right.
And that, honestly, these days, that's the story of a lot of people. And I got a lot of questions about the Kairos ministry, the Kairos weekend, like the thing they do in prison, asking me if I've been a part of that. The thing with the Kairos weekend, it's a 3-day weekend. Mm-hmm. They prepare for that for 6 months, sometimes 8 months. And you go to 2 or 3 meetings a week, and you go off as a group for the weekend. And I've just never been able to put the time together to do it. And honestly, I've never wanted to do that. Like, it just seems like it's too much for me. It's good for them. But so I've never done a Kairos weekend where I was there the whole time. But they have a thing called fourth day speaker. They always bring somebody in at the last that's been through a Kairos that just kind of tells their journey. And I've been a fourth day speaker for a Kairos dozens of times, and I love doing that because I get to see the guys on the other side. Brandy, who is one of our top fans.
Yes.
We love Brandy. She
encourages us so much.
Oh, yes, she's great. And I feel like there's something about her and I, maybe our backgrounds, I don't know this, I just feel it. Like maybe we're similar in some way, like maybe like family, I don't know that. But I just feel a connection with her.
Yeah.
But she's been trying to get her brother to listen to the podcast because his story is kind of similar to mine. And he finally started listening. I got a message from him, Kevin. He says, I found the podcast through my sister because she kept on about it. He said, I binged listening to the whole thing. And he said he could see similarities from his own story, like how it started through prison. He said, I didn't actually come to faith in prison. It was my story was a little different. But he has since then, like on the other side. But he said the one, I think it was the end of season 2, episode 1, where I had an experience with Jesus, that really touched him.
You've covered a lot of questions right in a row there.
I'm reading them.
Yeah.
I just pasted them all into a notepad so I could have them. Do you have any? I'm sorry.
Gosh, I think you've covered a lot of the ones. There was a lot about Culver House, and I did get some about the visitors, and I've gotten also a lot of questions about what's next, and is there going to be actually a season 3?
I've had people stop me and say, please don't stop.
But I have to say the name, and I always say this, the name of the podcast is Straight Outta Prison. So of course we're going to say what happened when you got straight out of prison. I mean, because that is a story. I mean, this is, I guess, a little teaser. And don't worry, I won't say too much. But the fact that, like, you came to Birmingham when you got out of prison with literally a paper sack with everything you owned.
Yeah.
I mean, and to look at your life today and really all that's happened in between then, that you got out of prison, came to a new city with, I mean, y'all know what I'm talking about, the old-time grocery bags that are the brown paper bags. That's what I'm talking about. One of those is what you had, and that's everything you owned coming into Birmingham. So, there's a story there of from that to this.
That's exciting, that part.
Yeah.
I mean, the first about 8 months out of prison, it was just like just crazy.
Don't give it away.
I won't.
We're going to talk about
it. Free at last. Thank God Almighty. I'm free at last. But God kept his word to me. Like, you'll be my man in Birmingham. I got a plan. Just trust me. Just trust me. And it was, it's hard coming out. And, I want to get married. I want to get, I need to buy a house. I need to start a business. All the things I had in my mind.
Little did you know you had quite a while to wait for that.
Yeah. 13 years.
That's insane.
Years. And a lot of pain for relationships in between. But let's don't give all that away. So yes, there will be there really will be a season 3. I promise we're not going to stop. Also, if you're sharing this with people, I did note this when we were having that group we had a couple weeks ago where the guy was saying, I can't find this podcast on my phone. And he was typing in Straight Out of Prison.
Ah, okay.
And I was like, oh, we did it after, like, out of the Straight Outta Compton thing. We did Straight Outta Prison, OUTTA.
Yeah.
So if you're sharing it with somebody and they're trying to type it in, I mean, if you send the link, they got it. But they have to type in to find it straight, OUTTA prison. Straight Outta Prison.
Outta Prison.
Straight Outta Prison.
Yeah.
And then there is one more. I want to thank and just recognize Dalton Moore.
Yes.
He's our sound editor. He has been amazing.
And content. So the coughs and the ums and the, does that make sense when there's a dozen in 1 minute?
And he did all the music. He did the artwork. This is his first podcast. And I don't even know how we found him. Like, it was you said, I can't get this guy's name off my mind. And I was like, true. Does he do podcasts? And she said, I don't know. I said, well, you can ask him and see, but he's been such a gift to us, and just appreciate him so much. If you ever want to know anything about Dalton, look up Cornerstone Ranch in Alabama. He's the director. Tell us a little bit about Cornerstone Ranch.
He has a lot of things going on. He's very gifted, and he is the director of Cornerstone Ranch, and that is a kids camp site here in Gardendale. I believe it's in Gardendale.
Or if it's not, it's right outside of Gardendale.
And they do camps and work with kids, and really their mission is to serve kids and bring him Jesus through outdoor activities and all that. So Cornerstone Ranch, he's a director of that. He does an awesome job. There's a camp in the summer.
Yes, it's amazing.
That fill up fast, so they're probably already filled up by the time you hear this.
Yeah. Imagine if there was something like that when I was a kid instead of going to the Free Will Baptist camp.
Yeah.
Like maybe I would not be recording this particular
Free Will
podcast.
Baptist camp. We are like throwing the Free Will Baptist under the bus. If you are Free Will Baptist,
No, I can because I
there's
are
no
one.
judgment.
No, but that's like people that like you can talk. I can talk about my mom. That's my mom. But you better not talk about my mom. I can talk about Free Will Baptist because they're my people.
Yeah. Thank you, Dalton. You've been awesome. But I do want to say, as we wrap up, we just want to say thank you again for all the support and feedback. It really has been overwhelming. It has been just such a gift and surprise for us coming down here to our basement and James telling his story while I'm asking him questions. Just, I feel like you're so good at that. And I've enjoyed asking questions. It's what I like to do. And so, yeah. Does that wrap it up? Anything more?
That wraps it up for me. We're looking forward to season 3. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty. We are free at last.
Stay tuned.
All right, we'll see you soon, guys.
Bye.
Hey, guys, thanks so much for tuning in to the Straight Outta Prison Podcast. For more exclusive content, head over to our website, timjones.co/podcast.
Yes, you can subscribe by clicking on the Become a Patron button, and that's going to get you access to our For Real Reel, which is very different than the Highlight Reel. Some very juicy content there.
Good stuff. Or you can look us up on Facebook and Instagram, Straight Outta Prison Podcast.
Yes, that takes the story to a whole new level where you can see some of the people that James talks about in his story and see some of the places that he's been. I've been loving it, and you will too.
Prison recipes.
Yeah, all the things.
Good stuff. We'll see you soon, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Getting anything out of these videos, please hit the like button, the subscribe. If you never want to miss a recipe or anything I do, hit the little bell and you'll get notifications. G-Man!